Welcome back to another edition of Stories from the Edge. I'm your host. I guess you're right along, Esco, and of course I'm joined by Ed Suhu, the storyteller, the catalyst, the guy that gets it going. You know, as I've been on customer calls with Ed, he finds the most unique ways to use just simple things to turn a conversation. And I love the way he spins what should be cheeky or naughty and makes that a part of the whole sales conversation. So Ed, I'm interested to see what you're doing today. I'm interested what you brought to the table to share with us on Stories from the Edge. So what is it? What are we going to learn about today?
Hey, thanks, Esco. Today's subject or title is what I call the Land of Godzilla.
Okay.
People are like, what? And people ask me, where do you get your inspirations when you tell your stories? I tell them I get it from an eclectic mix of life, mistakes, get the heck out of Dodge moments, and movies. I love movies.
Movies.
Now,
Okay.
what does that have to do with the Land of Godzilla?
Right.
Back in 1999, 21 years ago, right? I was leading sales and business development for a mid-stage startup in San Francisco. I traveled all over the world, expanding the footprint of our solution and technology to all sorts of countries, like the UK, Germany, Brazil, France, and even Texas. So this story is about my first trip to Japan. Very excited about the trip, as this was going to be so different from all the other trips. As this one, I was going alone. I was being the Lone Ranger in this one. And the first meeting was on behalf of my CEO for an executive conference, along with all sorts of three other meetings with Minolta, a joint venture that we're forming in Japan, looking at our technology, and a large enterprise focused on retail. So those were my four meetings. So what I found out on this trip, it was filled with four-letter words. The first four-letter word is tide. The second four-letter word is oops. The third four-letter word is Yoda. And the fourth four-letter word, uh-oh. So as I go through these four-letter words and the colorful vignettes, they're
Right.
going to give you a sense of my experience in Japan, the land of the rising sun. Long
Okay.
flight, landed at Narita International, a bustling place. I find my way through the taxi stand. I reach out to open the door. The door opens by itself. Taxis are amazing in Japan. The cabs in Japan are so clean and neat, so different from New York City.
Right.
Very polite driver, again, different from New York City. I give him my printed out hotel name and off we went. It was nighttime. So as we're going through the landscape from Narita to downtown Tokyo, we go through this kind of mountainous region area. And I looked out there and I thought to myself, oh my gosh, this looks like out of the scenes where Godzilla came out of the countryside to wreak havoc in the city. Little did I know that was going to be my experience in Tokyo.
Wait, were you
So
going to be Godzilla or were you going to be the Havoc? Or wait, never mind. I'm
both,
sure we'll find out.
both.
Both.
So the first meeting, I don't speak the language. A lot of
Right.
gesturing and pointing in the morning, and I'm at the conference with a select number of high-powered executives and CEO from all over Japan and the region.
Right.
15 minutes into the meeting, someone said, "Hey, let's do a contest. You got 5 minutes to prepare. Here's the topic, and you need to do a 10-minute presentation on the fly, just like that, right?" So 20 CEOs pitched. It was fun to watch and listen as they all did their presentation, different styles, gestures, and messages. And as it turned out, I ended up being tied for first. That's the first four-letter word,
Tied. Got it.
tied. And I tied with the CEO of Trend Micro, Steve Chang. And he looked over at me and said, "Hey, congrats. Who the heck are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm standing in for my CEO." And he goes, "Hey, that's not bad for an impromptu pitch." I said, "Hey, thanks. I get better as I go along." And we really had a good chat. That night, we ended up, all of us were whisked off to an island off the shore into a special intimate concert by one of Japan's most popular singing artists, right? I got like, hey, now this is the life.
Yeah.
What else, what can go wrong, right? So the second meeting, the next day, I'm hosted by my partner at Yahoo Broadband, head of infrastructure, Suru-san, and we meet the CTO of Minolta. The CTO was so proud during the meeting. We were chatting and getting along really well, and then he pulls out a product. It's a really small hard drive for a media player, like an iPod. For those who don't know, that's like 20 years ago. And he was really proud of it. I said, hey, why would you use the hard drive when solid state drives are less than a couple of years away? Silence. Stone cold silence. I found out that, oops, the second four-letter word, the meeting didn't go well. The guy was not happy. I called him out. Surusan pulled me aside later and said, not a good thing, Surusan. So I learned not to open my mouth to a CTO level, dissing someone's decision on a technology. That taught me one heck of a lesson. So the third meeting, we're forming a JV, a joint venture in Japan with JCB, sort of like a Visa, MasterCard equivalent credit card company. Dentsu, a large advertising agency, and Itochu. Itochu is like one of the larger companies of a Keiretsu, which is a combination of companies to build a buying consortium. And I knew that the approval of the JV would be difficult without JCB. So I had to get someone to kind of be my supporter. So I talked to the guy at Dentsu, and I had to convince Itochu to stand up and take a vote for the JV. So the night before the vote, I take Okada-san from Dentsu out to dinner. After dinner, Okada-san goes, Suhu-san, you like sake? I said, Okada-san, I love sake. So we went out to a bar, and by the end of the night, we're both having a really fun time. I found out that in Japan, you never fill your own glass. Your host does, and you do the same for your host. So it's a very interesting series of customs. Okada-san leaned over near the end of the evening, looked at me, he goes, and his face was tomato red. He goes, oh, Susan, you like sake. And I said, Okada-san, I love sake, kampai, right? So I had him, and I had his vote. Next day, the day of the vote, just before the meeting for the JV, Sakamoto-san from Itochu walked over to me looking a little nervous. He goes, Suhu-san, JCB may not vote positive for JV. I said, I know. I said, Sakamoto-san, have you ever seen the movie The Matrix? I love that movie. He looked at me a bit puzzled, and he goes, yes. I said, do you remember Neo? Yes, Suhu-san. He knows Kung Fu. I said, yeah, good movie. He goes, and I said, Sakamoto-san, I need you to be Neo. I want you to take a risk. I want you to take the red pill. So when I ask for the vote, I want you to stand up and say, I support this joint venture. That will flip Okada-san at Dentsu, and it'll be 2 against 3. He goes, I will do that. So we got the approval. After the vote, Sakamoto-san came up to me, he goes, you are Yoda-san, my third letter word. I said, oh, gee, thanks, Sakamoto-san. I said, how about Obi-Wan-san? I said, I don't want to be that little green guy. You know, he smiled and said, oh, okay. So the fourth meeting, and my fourth four-letter word,
Right,
which is, uh-oh. I'm giving a presentation to a CEO in Japan, big retail enterprise. And when you go to Japan for a big meeting like this, when you sit at the table, the power position is what they call center high, which is the center of the table. The CEO sits in the power slot, and he had 3 lieutenants on each side, and the interpreter at the end, and then just me on the other side. 7 on 1, right?
I was gonna say big old table and just you.
Yeah, so I'm sitting there, and I'm sitting directly across from the CEO, Kasuga-san, and the meeting starts. I give the presentation 3 sentences at a time, so that the interpreter can do their thing, right? It took like forever. I finally finished. Kasuga-san nods and speaks in Japanese. I never look at anyone at the table except him. I'm locked on him. The interpreter said, Kasuga-san, very pleased with your presentation and would like to meet again tomorrow. At the meeting, he would like to discuss what the business relationship would look like, and as a part of that, he wants exclusivity to your technology. I pause. I'm thinking, I can't give it to him. I can't say yes. I can't say no. Too early. Exclusivity is never a good thing to discuss. And Finally, I said, Kasuga-san, I look forward to tomorrow's meeting. As for exclusivity, please allow me to tell you a story. The interpreter started to translate, and before he got the first word out, Kasuga-san, without even looking at the interpreter, held his hand out to stop him from translating. Shush, right? My eyes widened a little bit, and then Kasuga-san folded his hands in front of him, leaned forward, looks at me, and he said, and your story is in English. In English. Oh my gosh. He knew what I was saying all along. He caught me off guard, and I actually blinked. My body language was like, oh my God. I felt like a little jolt of lightning. And I gathered myself and I said, Kasuga-san, consider this only a story. But for generations, my family is known to make the best swords in all the land. If we sell our swords to you, Kasuga-san, to fight your enemies and win your battles, we sell our swords to your allies. And I gestured to his lieutenants to have them defeat your enemies and protect your land. And then I stopped. Kasuga-san tilted his head like a little puppy, and he goes, and you would sell your swords to my enemies to fight me with the same weapon? I said, yes, Kasuga-san. Why? Kasuga-san, that's what I do for a living. So if everyone has the same weapon, how do I win? Looking very skeptical. And I said, well, Kasuga-san, battles are rarely won with weapons alone. It is a combination of the weapon along with skill, strategy, and leadership. A pause on his side, and I said, perhaps we can look to history to give us an example. He goes, history. I said, Miyamoto Musashi, Bushido, samurai warrior, Book of Five Rings. Half his battles, I would wager, he won with his practice sword. Pause, and he grunts, Bushido. Japanese are really good at grunting. He looks left to his team, looks right to his team, looks back at me. He goes, Susan, we look forward to our meeting tomorrow. And we do not need exclusivity to win.
Nice, nice.
We stand up, bow, shake hands. He goes out and he walks by me. He goes, good story. So he and his team leaves the room, and my host comes up to me and goes, what the heck was that? I go, oh, I don't know. I just kind of made it up. He goes, what? I go, yeah, I kind of made it up. He goes, how do you do that? I go, well, this morning I was preparing for the meeting. I like to clear my head, so I like to walk around. And so I walked around the hotel, the new Otani Hotel in the Akasaka district, and I ended up in the lower level of the hotel where there were some shops. And I walked over to there was an antique shop. And in the window was a display of a samurai warrior, armor regalia, and the helmet, really cool stuff. And in front of that samurai warrior regalia was a display stand for the long sword, the katana. I go, huh, sword, PBS series. Swords are made this way. Craftsman, skills, strategy, weapon. Okay, I think I got it. And I kind of pulled all that together in my head, and I'm like, oh, okay, I think I might have something here. And he goes, and that's how you came up with your story? I go, yeah. So what's funny is, in closing, is I share this because there are always things you're prepared for. And then there are things that become your uh-oh moment, and you got to wing it.
Right.
How to respond to it. Then there's the oops, yeah, I shouldn't have said that. Then there's the moment you need support, and you become Yoda and guide your client and your partners through a strategy. So those four-letter words and those 4 meetings to Japan is really about, the experiences in what I call the Land of Godzilla. Never more fun.
Ed, constantly surprising me. Constantly surprising me. I look forward to the next one, and the next one in the series will be posted shortly. Tune in. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Esco-san.